is Rebecca Schissel Marshall with Whole Body Upgrade, a podcast to help you get unstuck, feel better, and have more energy. Let's get started. Hey y'all, I'm super excited to be recording my first video podcast. So we're trying this out. So we are going to get everything going. Welcome to episode 42. I want to begin by welcoming the directions. I want to begin by welcoming the great direction of the east, the direction of the south, the direction of the west, and the direction of the north. I welcome in all the loving and compassionate spirits from each of these directions. And I welcome in all of the elements. I welcome in air and fire and water and earth. I welcome in the direction that is above and the direction that is below and the direction that is within. I welcome in all of the compassionate and helping spirit guides that are here to support us. And I welcome in the ancestors who have lived well and died well and who are here to help us with the day-to-day. And I acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Creek and the Cherokee in what is now known as Athens, Georgia. Hello, dear ones. I'm so glad to be connecting with you today. This podcast is actually one of my favorite things that I do, and I really look forward to it each week. And today I wanted to talk to you about something that I hope will be helpful. This is something that I see often in my clients and the students that I work with, and maybe it will help you in addressing what's happening in your health and well-being. So often my clients come to me thinking that there is one thing that is keeping them stuck or that is holding them back from having more energy and feeling vibrant. And so often they go after that one thing, and then they find that working on that one thing just doesn't seem to make a difference. And what I see is they try over and over and over again with little to no progress. And then they wonder why it's not working. And they give up, or worse, they think that there's something wrong with them. So, for example, sometimes clients will come to me thinking that they need to change their food choices. And maybe they've been directed by a doctor or someone else to make different nutritional choices. So they come in thinking that food is the problem. And what I see is it sets up this adversarial relationship with food. I can't eat that. I must eat this. And the energy around food then becomes very hard and heavy, and everything is about food. The focus becomes what they need to change and what's wrong. And often there's a story, right? There's a story about how it's so hard. And yeah, it is hard when we're in that me against food mentality. Or even worse, some of these clients come in and they're still in that diet mentality. They bring the scale out. They want to measure their progress by their weight. And what's really interesting is that much of the time when I start to ask more questions around food or around whatever the issue is, even if it's around moving their body or sleep, is that there's often a root cause of the difficulty with making change that doesn't actually have to do with the food. It's not about the fruits or vegetables or even food itself. There's usually an underlying issue that comes to the surface when I start to make suggestions. So first it'll come out as how hard it is usually to make the changes, how it's not possible, right? They list all of these reasons and excuses for why it won't work. And if you go back and listen to episode 40, where I talked about how we argue for our own limitations, that's part of this, right? We come up with all the reasons why it's not going to work. What's really interesting is what is underneath all of those arguments, right? It seems like it's a food issue, but it's not. What's underneath the food could, for One example could be more about big emotions that aren't being processed, and food is being used as the comfort. It's the buffer, it's the way to not feel those big feelings. We all have big emotions in our lives, and many of us are not taught to feel our feelings. I mean, it's just not something that we hear regularly, especially for those of you who are in my age bracket, right? We weren't taught, "Hey, how are you feeling? It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry for women." We're taught to cover them up. We're taught to put them down. We're taught to distract ourselves with something like food. Another thing that could be underneath are the emotions connected with food. So, not the emotions that we're not trying to feel, but certain things that are tied to or connected with food. For some women, it can be connected to childhood, right? How you, as a child, how you were talked to about food or your eating habits, or maybe your body was shamed. Then, of course, anything you try to change with what you're eating or what you eat is going to be brought to the surface, even if it's 20 or 30 or 40 years later. There could also be, because of a challenge, because of a difficult time, there could be a soul essence that needs to be returned to your spiritual wellness body. For some clients, it's more about their current relationship, maybe with their partner or their spouse or their friends. Many times, women will say that they can't make food changes because their partner won't make changes with them. So, one thing that can happen is there can be tension in the relationship. What's really interesting is that this can happen in the mind before the client even has a chance to ask, which is a different issue from actually asking the partner to help them make the changes and them saying no. So both of these can have lots of different root causes, such as lack of self-love, a lack of emotional or energetic boundaries, or other past issues in the relationship that don't have anything to do with food, but that are unresolved. These can come to the surface when there is any sort of change that is being initiated, especially when you're talking about a dynamic of two people instead of just one person. It's the dance of identity, right? Both who am I now if I'm making these changes, if I'm not eating these foods, and also the partner's response to who you are becoming. For some, it could also be related more to beliefs about yourself. It may show up as, why bother? That's something I hear from clients. At first, people may say, but why bother? That's usually a symptom of bigger themes. For example, it could be rooted in beliefs such as you don't finish what you start, right? Or you aren't able to do anything other than what you're currently doing. Like nothing else different is possible. I'm stuck in this place. The very common kind of underlying belief beneath each of those is not being good enough, right? If you don't feel like you are good enough, then it can feel really heavy and a large burden to try to make changes with food. So, all of these reasons, the short way to say it is it's not about the spinach. It's not about the 9 fruits and vegetables that you're encouraged to eat every day. It's really about the holistic vision of you. Now, of course, you've heard me talk about I use the centered wellness framework to look at everything. So it's about all aspects of you. It's about the physical, the emotional, the mental, the energetic, and the spiritual wellness bodies. The changes you want to make with food can be about the emotions that are tied up with food or how we use food not to feel the emotions. It can be about the thoughts we have or how we feel about ourselves. It can be about the energetic boundaries that we create or about the energy that needs to be removed or the power of the soul essences that need to be returned because of those challenges that you faced as a child. So here are some of the layers. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you are in pain and you wonder if inflammation might be the root cause, right? After listening to the podcast, you decide, okay, I'm going to follow an anti inflammatory diet. And then what happens is you make that decision, and then the layers start to peel back. Maybe first there's a fear of being deprived, that you don't want to give up something, or there's a connection with a certain food as who you are, or, well, I'm a person who eats that food, or that's what I like. For example, when I became a vegetarian, I ate a lot of cheese. And when it was suggested that it might be helpful for me to remove dairy from my diet, I fought that idea. I had already moved from eating all food, right, to becoming a vegetarian. And I was, eating a lot of cheese then. I was relying a lot on cheese. And I thought, I can never live without cheese. I can never live without cheese. I eat it in everything. I felt like cheese was what balanced out my blood sugar. I felt like I needed it for the protein. And I felt like it helped me feel a certain way, like it helped me feel satiated and full. There was an identity there as a person who loved cheese, that I needed cheese to be able to survive. And then something interesting happened. I found out that my two boys were both allergic to dairy. They had all sorts of problems if they ate dairy, emotionally, physically, mentally, everything. So I stopped eating cheese. We as a family stopped eating cheese. We figured out a way because suddenly there was a very big reason for me. I could step out of all those internal reasons that I had in my brain because of those reasons. I saw it was possible. I saw the benefits in myself once I did. So I took that lesson and I applied it to all other areas. I realized that it wasn't just about the food. I was making excuses before because obviously I could and I did cut out cheese. I did make those changes I decided I wanted to make. I just needed a strong enough reason. When I first became a vegetarian, it was something very similar. I was eating meat and my cholesterol was through the roof. Now, that time it was for me. It was something that I needed a big enough reason for. Oh, my health is in danger. So over time, I learned a different, strong enough reason than just relying over my boys. I had to become my own strong enough reason. And I want that for you. I want you to be your own reason for making change. It doesn't have to be for your kids or your friends or your family. I want your reason for making change to be because you love yourself and you want to take care of yourself and nurture yourself, this precious human that you are. That's what I want for you. I want you to become your strong enough reason for any positive change you make in your life. And it's okay if that's not today. So, how do you do it? How do you make these changes? Well, you start small. It's almost always about starting small. You say kind words to yourself that you actually believe. You change the conversation in your head to be one of love and compassion. You listen to what will nourish you, and you make time to do that thing, whether it's cooking or moving your body or taking time off. You show up for yourself and you learn to love yourself. It's very simple. And I know it's not easy. I have walked this very path myself for over 20 years. So I know what it feels like. And I also know it's possible. And let me tell you, life is so much more enjoyable now that I know how to love and care for myself. Okay, dear ones, I'm cheering you on as you look at what you think it is that's keeping you from change and what's the underlying root cause. So often, it's not what you think it is. Okay. I'll talk to you next time. Take good care of yourself. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Whole Body Upgrade. If you'd like to learn more about working with me, you can visit me on Facebook or Instagram or on my website, Centered You, that's centeredyou.com. See you on the next episode of Whole Body Upgrade.